Greetings, welcome to Kraken Knuckleheads with the Canucks on the East Coast on our lengthy road trip. We're focusing on the Kraken this time around, and that's because they're amidst a home and home against the Anaheim Ducks. Seattle won in Anaheim 3-2 on Monday night with a little comeback victory, and they'll look to sweep the Quackers on Wednesday night at Climate Pledge Arena. It is our distinct pleasure today to welcome in the 23-year television play-by-play veteran of the Ducks, John Ahlers, a Michigander who used to do the Detroit Vipers of the International Hockey League, also did some play-by-play for the Tampa Bay Lightning at some point, but he's been teamed up with Brian Hayward for the last 2+ decades. Johnny Kidd, a delightful man, an excellent broadcaster, and he's talking to you about the Ducks and the Kraken. And here he is, actually live in person, John Ahlers, the 23-year television voice of the Anaheim Ducks. Johnny Kidd, how are you?
I'm good, but when you say it like that, it makes me seem old.
One thing I left out of your bio, by the way, is you were not fortunate enough to attend the bastion of academia, that is the stalwart university called Central Michigan. You settled down, I guess, the road an hour to Michigan State and
I was
graduated.
accepted. I was accepted at Central
Oh, were
Michigan.
you?
I was, yeah.
But you went to Michigan State instead of the Big Ten,
I was accepted both places,
which
yes.
is
And Central had a wonderful broadcast program. I do know that, and that was the whole, that was the whole objective for me at the time. Michigan State had a good one too, and I was a legacy. My mom was a Spartan grad too, so I don't know that I really had a choice.
right. How about number one in the men's college poll this week, by the way, the Spartans?
Yeah, I got that via text from some friends. The Pairwise has them number one, and my other college hockey stop, Colorado College, I'm told at least was in the top 10 a
Huh.
couple of weeks ago as well. So it should be a fun year for college hockey, and I'll have to keep an eye.
Yeah, wow, that's unbelievable. The Spartans have had it's been since Ron Mason, really, since they were super good, right?
That's when I called their games. Ron was there, and Ron was good to me after I left. And the program meant a lot to him, and how people fared within the sport. He thought reflected on the program, and he was always very proud of anyone, not just his players, but anyone who came out of the program. And I was fortunate to have spent time with Ron.
I want to save some fun stories from the past for a future conversation with you. But one thing I will bring up, you lost a cup final doing the games with Babs as the head coach. You won a cup with Randy Carlyle as the head coach, and then you had Gabby there for a little while. And I bring him up because I did about, I don't know, it seems like a dozen or so podcasts with Bruce Boudreau last year. And then I just saw him on Spit and Chicklets talking to the boys the last couple of days. You must have had some fun with Gabby.
I don't think anybody spends as much time as we did with Bruce. I believe he was our coach for 5 years, and it's impossible not to have fun. He's as
Yeah.
good a person as you'll meet. He's as good a person in the game of hockey that you'll meet. And I know you could do 100 podcasts with him, and you would not scratch the surface of the stories. He's so much fun to be around and listen to, and he's just as normal a human being and as regular a guy as you will ever come in contact with.
How much fun is Greg Cronin to be around right now as the head coach of the Ducks?
Greg Cronin, for me, is always fun to be around. I mentioned briefly my time at Colorado College, and Greg and I were roommates for a year at
Wow.
Colorado College. He was a first-year assistant coach with the program. I was a second-year radio play-by-play guy who also did some work with the program, trying to sell some advertising and in the game programs and pitch the program. And was making very little money, and they looked out for all of us because we had an equipment manager and a goalie coach in there as well. And we shared a 4-bedroom condo, and we got a real nice deal on it. So Greg and I go way back.
Wow.
I'm probably not, I probably am a little too close to it to be a true sounding board as to how much fun Greg is having. But they've made some real good strides this year. The record is one game under 500. Everyone would like to see it go faster, Greg included. But it's such a young hockey team that right now they've got to look at the process. They've been involved, unfortunately, for a long time in the process. For Greg, it's only a little over a season, and this is his first kick at the NHL head coaching can. So I think there's a lot of scrutiny, as there is for 32 NHL head coaches. Let's face it, nobody escapes the spotlight.
It seems like you have games in hand on everyone because everybody's saying, "Oh, the Ducks are struggling this and that." But if you win the damn game against Seattle, you're a game above 500 instead of being a game below 500. You've only played 20 times. What went wrong? I watched the game. I mean, I kind of saw what went wrong, but that must have been a frustrating third period.
Yeah, the youth comes out in different ways, and the last two games, unfortunately, it's come out in letdowns when a goal is given up. They led Buffalo by 2 late in the second period and gave up a goal, 2-0. And then the next thing you know, 50 seconds later, they gave up another goal. Now you go to the locker room and it's a 2-2 game after 2 periods of play, and it really felt so much better than that. They lead 2-1 going into the third against Seattle, and then boom, they give up the early goal. I think it was less than a minute in, and then boom, 24 seconds later, Montour puts home the game winner. And the letdowns, are things that veteran teams don't have, and the adversity. I know Dan Bilesma talked about it, and he spoke to us about it yesterday morning before he addressed the media, that's a big focus for him, is the in-game, how they respond to the in-game adversity. Never mind, the prep and the challenges that an opponent may create for you. He wants to see his team respond to the in-game adversity. And unfortunately, the last 2 games for the Ducks, they didn't respond well to that in-game adversity. And they ended up getting 1 out of 4 points in games that it looked like they might get 2 points in regulation out of.
I'm thinking they probably in this case like a home and home. You're in Seattle right now. You get to flip it and try to get a little revenge essentially immediately.
Yeah, and the irony is this team has played better on the road under Greg Cronin since he got here. Last year, obviously, they didn't win a lot of games, but they won more on the road than they did at home. They're actually over 500 this season on the road. I think it's 4-3-2 are the numbers right now, and I think they've got points in 4 straight on the road as well. So they're, and again, maybe that's something that a young team, they're able to internalize a little better on the road when they're out there as a group. I know we've got a lot of young fathers on the team, on top of the fact that we have young players, period. So, we all, no one wants to criticize being at home, but there are more distractions at home. And especially when some of those distractions might be new, they create larger challenges.
Yeah. I mean, it always comes up the small hockey world. The fact that you and Greg were roommates in college is pretty amazing. Um, I think of Chris Aldrich, by the way, your head equipment guy. What the hell's his nickname? He's going to kill me.
Muggsy.
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 We were in Boston together for a couple seasons, and I love running into Muggsy. And also another guy for some reason you can spell this out for me, but I feel bad for John Gibson. He's gone through hell because the team's been rebuilding. It's just been a struggle here in recent years, and now Lucas Dostal's kind of the number one guy. But I was TV boy at ice level for 2 different networks, NHL Network in 2012, when he basically took the job away from Jack Campbell at the World Juniors. And then I was in for TSN in Canada and Russia when he won gold. And he was just ice in his veins. And it was like, oh, man, the American goaltending's in good shape here for a long time to come with this guy. And then Hellebuck comes along. But man, what a tough situation for Johnny Gibson after all these years. And I think he's played 4 times.
Yeah, he has. I would imagine he plays tomorrow here in Seattle. Ever since he has come back, he's only started back-to-back games once. I think part of it was, easing him back in. I think the plan this season was to be pretty much a split. Lucas got the lion's share of the games early because he had that emergency appendectomy at the very end of camp there, late September. And as a result, wasn't available to the team for the first 12 games. And I don't think they wanted to throw too much at him too soon, but he's been very good since he came back. He has been, he's been through the ringer with this organization. He joined at a time when, Freddie Anderson was here, and then they split and they won the Jennings together in 2016, I think it was. And
Yep.
they went to two Western Conference finals together in 15 and 17. And that was kind of his indoctrination to the NHL. And, obviously we saw it here with Getzlaf and Perry. They won the cup their second year in the league. And, I'm sure whether you want to admit it or not, it's like, this is great. We're going to do this every year. It's human nature. And then you don't do it every year. And as a result, you have to deal with that adversity personally within your career. John has been rumored to be on the move for probably the last 3 years. There's been talk that he's asked for a trade. His camp, including his agent, have vehemently denied it at times. I don't really hear a lot of pushback anymore on it. I don't know what that means. The bottom line is he's still a very good goalie, but he's somewhat a slave to the numbers that have been produced the last 3 years. And that's been playing behind a team that hasn't taken care of him very well. He has seen more shots than any other goalie, more grade A opportunities, and he has played very well. Each of the last 3 years, the Ducks have come out of the gate surprisingly well in October because their goaltending has absolutely carried them. And obviously the weight of the persistence that is the grind of an 82 game schedule has caught up with them, and it caught up to the goaltenders. This year it was Lucas Dostal because John wasn't there, but the previous 2 years Gibson was just spectacular through October and into November, and the team seemed to be exceeding expectations. Now this year the hope is that they can continue to, in many people's eyes, exceed expectations, because I think NHL 500 would probably exceed a lot of expectations this year because they have a duo, and that might make it better on John Gibson, because I don't think there's any doubt he has worn down through the weight of it all over the previous couple of seasons.
What's Leo Carlsson's status heading into Wednesday night, given that he left the game on Monday night?
I don't believe he's going to play on Wednesday. I don't know the severity of it. They skated this morning before we traveled, and he was not on the ice with the team. And typically, under Greg Cronin, if you don't practice the day before a game, you're not going to be in the lineup. Right. I'm not even certain if he made the trip. We sit in the back of the plane, so we don't see everybody. And we're on a different bus on the way to the hotel. So Leo could easily not even be with us, and I wouldn't know it until tomorrow. But yeah, it was unfortunate. It looked to me like it wasn't even a late hit. I was a little perplexed in the moment when they were reviewing it. I didn't clearly hear what the referee said on his microphone, and apparently, I guess I can only assume, and Mom said never to do this, Rob, that whole assuming thing, something about you and me. I can't remember the rest of it, but I can only assume he said they were calling a major for interference, because my understanding is that's the only way you can review it. And they ended up giving a 2-minute minor for interference. But at full speed, I didn't think it looked like a late hit. But the next time they ask me, it'll be the first.
The who's who of injuries early season, no? And what's the status?
With Cam Fowler, I do know practiced today, and I do know he traveled with the team. I did see him on the plane, so that's a player who's missed the last 8 games. He could be potential for tomorrow. Robbie Fabry's out. He's been out with a knee injury for the last half a dozen games, which is unfortunate. He seems to unfortunately fall under the injury shroud at some point in time. Brock McGinn has missed the last 3 games with what was it? Just a nasty looking collision in Dallas, in which his leg did some things that I don't think they're supposed to do, but he's up walking around. I haven't seen him practice yet. He's out with a lower body injury as well. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I mentioned Fowler. I mentioned Fabry, and then I guess Leo's would be Carlsson on top of that.
Yeah, Leo's the new one. All right, I'm gonna let you go, because I know we'll talk to you again down the road. It's always an absolute delight to see you. I don't run into you in the rinks often enough. I usually am at games in Seattle, but I will not be at this one. I'm jet setting east this week, but it's always a pleasure. And of course, your brother Hazy. Well, you two are freaking fracking, because he was there when you got there, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's a day one. He's an original Mighty Duck on the air. And so he's 31 years in now.
Damn.
And I believe he's at some point in the very near future, he's going to hit 2,000 games on the air. And I'm, honored to have done, I think, about 3/4 of those with him. So nice. We've been together on the air, and that makes it, that makes everybody's job easier. Certainly makes my job easier. We know what to expect of one another, and I truly enjoy the partnership that we have had for all this time. I hope it continues. But lucky to have spent 23 years in the booth with the same person.
Delightful man. I worked one Olympics with him, and weird, a little weird, like most goalies, and it was kind of fun. I
Goes
had
without saying, Rob. You don't even have to say it.
I know. I had Darren Elliott on not too long ago talking about Vegas. Of course, those two were together at Cornell.
They were the tandem, the big red tandem. And
Big red
I
tandem.
worked with Darren Elliott for a year and a half. He worked with me with the Detroit Vipers, and
Oh, yeah.
so the circle continues and the tangled web we weave.
Were you right before Matt Shepard doing those broadcasts?
Yeah, yeah. I was the first 5 years with the Vipers, and then when I left to go to Tampa, Matt came in, and I
Yeah.
was happy for him and happy to see that opportunity go his way.
I filled in for one game with him, the Vipers,
Oh, really?
in Houston, and there was a party going on in the room next door at the hotel, and I had to sleep in the bathtub because it was so noisy. It sucked. I was
The lengths
exhausted.
we go to. You're a pro, Rob. You're an absolute pro.
They beat the Arrows that next night. Johnny Ahlers, thank you very much. We'll talk to you down the road, and have fun in Seattle, of course.
Rob, always a pleasure. Happy holidays, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Johnny Kidd. Wednesday night action at Climate Pledge Arena, the Ducks and the Kraken. We'll see you next time. Kraken Knuckleheads. Don't forget Simmerpuck on YouTube and on Twitter/X. See ya.